The convenience versus the precision kind of weighed off really well for me. I was getting results, and if I wanted to cut, I could cut. If I wanted to bulk, I could bulk. I was like, okay, this is predictable. Technology works. Now, how do I get more and more people to a point where I am in the usage of the product?
You are a founder of an app called Reshape, which is AI powered fitness and nutrition assistant. Tell me, what is the origin of this story?
One thing that we were doing was simplifying information. There are hundreds of things I can tell you about a plate of food. What is important to you? What is important for your goals? And that is why we kind of abstracted a lot of macros, and we'd show calories and protein and fiber on top.
I understand that we can go to investors, but how do we still get to that execution level if I have a lot of ideas that are generating in my head? I see opportunities, but I don't have money.
In that journey, I kept doing different things. I'd go to the gym, I'd lose a little bit of weight at times. Everything was very qualitative. I could never predict where I was going to be in 3 months.
You would have been involving AI into their product. What is that one piece of advice you would give to them?
In today's busy world, where we are juggling between work, family, and education, we often neglect our health. In spite of you having money and motivation, you fail because of inconsistency. Today's guest is a 29 years old young entrepreneur who is solving this problem with his app called Reshape. It is an AI powered fitness and nutrition assistant that helps user track meals, workout, and their overall fitness journey in the much simplified manner. Amol is a simple boy from India who graduated as an engineer, did full-time job at a consultancy firm, always wanted to build healthy lifestyle but failed several times. And then he saw the same thing around him. Does this story not sound like yours and mine's? Right now, he is in Canada, and in this episode, we will dive into everything from his journey to the challenges that he faced using AI and how he got an idea, how did he build the team, how he stayed motivated, how can you build a product with no money, how does BA, UI, UX, developer, QA, founders actually supported him in this journey. So in short, we are going to pick his mind and unpack everything. But before we jump into the episode, don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Your support helps bring guests like Amol, who inspires us, who guides us through the journey. They are just people like you and me who provide so much valuable insight that you feel like you have so many ideas, but how do I execute it in the real market and how the market treats us? This episode, I'm sure, will make you grow into the best version of yourself. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to the show, Amol. How are you?
Thanks, Afaq. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Just a busy day, but glad to have you here. Um,
Likewise.
so, Amol, a bit of your background, right? So, you are a mechanical engineer from IIT, Indian Institute of Technology. Right after the graduation in 2017, you built your first product called Bookfish. Between
Mm-hmm.
2018 and 2022, you transitioned into consulting roles and relocated from India to Canada. Now you have founded another product called Reshape, which we'll be talking about shortly. But can you share your inspiring journey?
For sure, and that's a good summary. So thanks for looking into it. Yeah, so I did study at IIT BHU Varanasi, and I graduated in mechanical engineering. Practically, I did not study much mechanical engineering there. I was always a builder. I was always into robotics, and robotics is this unique domain where you have to integrate multiple kinds of systems together, right? You have to fiddle around a little bit with electronics. You have to work with electricals at times, and for power supply and whatnot you have to work with software to make the robot intelligent. So ever since I got into IIT, from first year I was on this voyage trying to gather experiences from different clubs, seniors, and learning and picking up bits and pieces, which gave me this multi-domain experience, and particularly systems engineering right from the start. And I think that was the foundation of me getting those capabilities to build. Then I was always looking, initially you're always thinking of that, hey, it'd be cool to turn on or turn off my lights from my phone. And this is pre Alexa days when smart devices were not a thing, especially in India. And that's what I started to build. But I guess as you grow up, you try to find applications. Okay, this is something I find cool. What is something that I can get to a lot of users? And I guess my journey there was always that, just keep trying to learn and like build those capabilities and see wherever I would find a little bit of an opportunity to build something cool that can help people out. And in my final year, I collaborated with my childhood best friend, Devanshu, uh, to build Bookfish. And Bookfish was born out of a need that, hey, we all had so many books, and after reading them, they would just be lying around in our dorm rooms. And we were like, hey, what if there was like a virtual database of all these books from across the campus, that people could know and people can trade books and buy and sell? And that is what we thought, that because the platform being digital, it'd be so easy to just distribute it to everyone. So we collaborated over Bookfish in the last 2 months of university for me. And yeah, and as fate would have it, Devanshu is my current co-founder with Reshape. We're childhood buddies, and like I guess like that collaboration did set up those foundations. Then I wanted to go for my master's in robotics because, as I said, like I was always interested in robotics. But well, academia works differently. I guess like I ended up doing a lot of projects in the hope that I will get to my dream universities, but it doesn't quite work like that. My GPA in my mechanical engineering was low because I was doing everything else, and I did not get to my dream school. And I did get an admit which I could defer at the time. So I was like, okay, let's defer it and let's experience working in India for a year. So I joined Capgemini, just pretty randomly, I guess. I was not really looking for a job, but this company came in and I was like, okay, let's write the test. And the interviews went well. And they were like, okay, just join us in Pune in August. And I was like, okay, let's do it. So for 2 years I spent in Capgemini, I was learning a lot of like how corporate works, how people like execute projects in the corporate world. I ended up joining this very new and rising domain of robotic process automation, where I had the unique advantage that the domain was so new that there was nobody with 10 to 12 years of experience in that. So even though I was a fresher, it was really up to me how fast I could catch up. And I did spend up like a lot of time just going through the software. I was working with WorkFusion at the time, and it was a giant software stack. I guess like it was overwhelming for most people, but because of my like background in robotics, and I actually did skip some details, that I was also looking into deep learning, machine learning, so I had that full stack experience. I just went all into the product. I knew everything that was happening at any corner of the entire ecosystem, and that gave me the capability to like design solutions for clients. And I was quickly promoted to first like being an RPA developer to machine learning engineer and then a solutions architect. I went and worked with different clients in Japan, Bangalore. I also went to Minsk, where WorkFusion headquarters were set up much early on in my career, which uniquely set me up to be one of the people with the most experience in the field. Yeah, and as like counterintuitive as it would sound, I was only 2 years into the corporate world. And then I got reached out by EPAM on LinkedIn, and they said that they had this opening for solutions architect for WorkFusion, and they could not fill the role in Canada. Would I be interested? Usually these things don't seem to work out because of visa and whatnot. But I was like, yeah, let's talk. And I had a conversation with the recruiter. They sent me the job profile. Everything matched just perfectly. And the only thing that didn't quite match was like, they were looking for somebody with 8 to 12 years of experience. And I said, like, except for that, I have everything you need. And they were like, okay, let's do the interviews and we'll see how it goes. And well, the interviews went well. And then I relocated to Canada in 2019, worked for 4 years with EPAM, where I met you in my very first year. So yeah, like, and I think like working in EPAM, I was working with RPA for 2 years, but then I did see that I wanted to build more. I didn't want to just use a product, but actually build out a product. How to create something of that scale that can be distributed to various people. And that's why I started my journey into cloud. I learned a lot about how cloud operates, particularly Microsoft Azure, various technologies there. Then I moved to a cloud project. I got a lot of cloud experience there. And I guess like just things kept happening. And then I collaborated with Devanshu to build like a company in India. He was building it. I was advising him on like how he can hire, what kind of projects he can do, and he basically get some clients from outside of India and build MVPs for them. And
Hmm.
that was a journey to get that go through the entire product life cycle and get something to market. And in that time I also like played around with marketing, running meta ads, and all of these things in my experience and my working with Devanshu and like trying to set up a team played a huge role in setting up those foundations that kind of got us to Reshape. So that'd be a summary of what my journey has been thus far.
It looks like it is a trend that every IIT graduate or someone from the dorm or from someone from the garage becomes a founder, co-founder, or a CEO of a company. What do you say?
Yeah, I think well, I saw some start that maybe not every IIT graduate would start a company, but most tech unicorns founded in India are started by IIT founders, if not most, a significant amount. And I think that happens because you get these people who are always very competitive. They are smart, they go through this like rigorous analytical examination of IIT JEE, so they're like smart people. You put everybody in like a similar campus, and yeah, and everybody's trying to like do something to impress other people. I guess it just becomes such that people tend to start companies, people tend to do very unique things. So I do think that that happens, but I wish it was happening a lot more actually, because many people that I know would just go for traditional jobs. A lot of IITians would go for MBA because everybody does, and get like a little pay bump, and then yeah, just people keep wondering. I think it's people find it a lot of risk to do startups, because you put a lot in stake. You're like, hey, I have this high paying job and I have all these credentials. Do I want to start from zero? Do I want to go somewhere where I might fail? Because when you're at a job, generally there are no failure stories, right? You always growing,
No
right? There might
risk-taking ability.
no risk, right? Like in the sense, like there might be micro failures in one or two projects that you would do, but in general, what a career trend looks like this. And a startup can just go to zero at any moment, right? It can fail. And I guess people do think that that's too much. And what I want to use this platform to say is that it is really not that much. And especially like people who our graduates from IIT or other like premier educational institutions, they should have more risk taking appetite, because first they're smart, second they've done so much in the corporate world, third they have a huge network, right? And if not them, then who? And they can always go back to the job market, right? So there's really not much to lose, but I guess in the moment it does feel like a lot to lose. So I wish there were more people from IIT and across the country doing startups.
Yeah, I completely agree. I also believe that it is all about the if I remember you mentioning that you always seek opportunity, always try to solve a problem. If you see a problem and you seek an opportunity, you start to think around it. And then, of course, the second thing is about taking the risk. Because if you don't take that execution to the next level, that is where there is a gap. So Amol, you are a founder of an app called Reshape, which you mentioned, which is AI powered fitness and nutrition assistant designed to help users track meal, workouts, and overall fitness program. So
Yes.
tell me, what is the origin of this story?
So I guess in all of this journey, one thing I did not mention was that I was a fat, chubby kid, like growing up all along, right? Growing up in an Indian household, we did not really care much about nutrition or know much about nutrition. It was like, yeah, that's the normal food that everybody eats at home. So you eat that. I was more into computers, so I was not like going out and playing a lot. And for those reasons, I was just like not in my best shape for most of my life until 12th standard. When I joined university, then again, like I was not able to quite figure out the science of it, right? In the sense that if you go to YouTube, you consume different content, you talk to people, everyone's telling you different things. Don't eat this, don't eat that. And it always bothered me so much that as mankind, we are able to figure out so many things. We've been to the moon, we send things to Mars and whatnot. We've solved the most complex of human problems, but we can't figure out something as fundamental as fitness. And the stats would kind of align with that, right? Most people in the world, especially in the developed world, are either obese or overweight. Like that's 70% of US 70% of Canada are either obese or overweight today. I was like, why? Like, what is so hard, right? Like, what is it about, like, just health and fitness that we can't seem to figure out? And in that journey, I guess, like, I kept doing different things. I'd go to the gym, I'd lose a little bit of weight at times, and then I'll gain it all back. Everything was very qualitative. There was not much quantifying. I could never predict where I was going to be in 3 months. I would have something in mind and I would generally not reach there. And I would not be able to understand why that was happening. So then COVID struck. We were all locked in our houses. And I was like, okay, I have some spare time to figure this thing out. I work with a fitness trainer, also an IITian from my institute, and he left his job at Samsung Research, became a full-time YouTuber and fitness trainer, and he taught me. Like, I've enrolled in a program with him for like 5 6 months, and he taught me the science behind fat loss, right? That, hey, this there's this thing called calories, which is a unit of energy that's written in all your food labels, and you are also burning calories, uh, just like as you exist. So if you take more calories than you burn, your body will store it as fat, because it thinks that it might need it in the future, because just as evolution so happened, like, storing fat was a great thing, right? Because we will not find food for days, and until we went foraging and find it again and then again. So that was like our survival instinct, and still deeply ingrained in us. And similarly, if you're in a deficit of calories, if you eat less calories than you are burning, then body has no option. It needs that energy from somewhere, right? And just second law of thermodynamics, and then body will just take fat and burn it. So that fundamental science, when he said, I think I had heard concepts of it in the past, but this time I was like, okay, I'm gonna try this. He taught me how to weigh my food. I would keep a log of everything. I would literally send him WhatsApp messages of like, okay, like I ate these many calories from these different things in lunch, dinner, etc. And I would send him the entire summary of the day every single day. And doing so, and I also uniquely got run into running at the time, because there was no social life, there was a lot of void. So I like, while I was losing some fat doing all of this, I went into running and like doing the fat loss, a little bit of strength training, running. I lost like 10 12 kgs at the time, and which was so fascinating to me, because I could predict how much I was going to lose. I could know exactly what was going to happen. I was like, Eureka. This is like, this works. I think this needs to be preached around
The
more.
magic clicked.
Yeah, the magic clicked, and I did not take any random supplements to do it, right? It was just like pure food that I was eating, but I was just eating in the right proportions that my body needed for certain goals that I wanted to achieve, and I could just make progress. So I think that's where the knowledge gap kind of bridged for me, and I understood that, okay, there is like, this kind of thing works. And then I would go around telling people, hey, you should weigh your food, you should keep a log of your food. And everybody would just tell me, are you crazy? Right? They'd be like, hey,
Yeah, I
I'm
log
not gonna.
myself. Yeah, I log myself.
Exactly. I'm guessing I'm only eating at home, and people have just these biases. And like, change is hard for people, and have empathy for that. People have busy lives, people have all sorts of things going on. They might not be as much motivated. And I guess now that I had this new lens to look at the world from, um, it started to, make me understand like how people are distributed across the world. There are some people who are very fit, right? I generally tell people that, like, the entire world is a pyramid of motivation, and on the top sit like professional athletes, which need like absolute precision, a lot of hard work, but they have the motivation for it because they're at the top of the pyramid. Below that, there are like seasoned bodybuilders who have been doing this for a decade. They might not be professionals, but they understand a lot of it. They're in very good shape. All these, like, bulked up dudes that you see on the streets, right? Like, these people come in that category. They'll figure stuff out, and they're very pro in what they do. Then there are do what I cans. People who are generally fit, who are probably pushing a little bit more and trying to find time, but they will gather information from YouTube, or whatnot, right? They'll work with a trainer. Then they'll use like these apps like Healthify Me or MyFitnessPal, which have existed for more than a decade now, and they existed at my time as well, but they were so cluttered and hard to use that most people will just drop off. That I'm not going to be logging my food, right? Like I would ask my mom to, like, okay, why don't you use one of these apps and just, like, write two chapatis at lunch? Like, again, are you crazy? And that's when I understand that there's this band called Do What I Can, and majority of the world is not falling into that. Then underneath that band is probably where I was, which is drop offs. You try fasting, you try tracking your food for 2 days, you try different things, and you keep dropping off, you keep dropping off. But the intention is there. That's why you ever try, right? So that is what I understood. That like drop offs have motivation enough and intent enough that they want to be fitter. So I don't need to convince them that, hey, you should be fitter, but they're looking for convenient solutions that kind of are sustainable in their lives, right? And that is when I've, like, this I guess, like, I spent a year into just looking into like how I can solve it for my family and my friends, and like how I can have them be at the best version of themselves. And that's when I understood that there is definitely a knowledge problem that I can bridge in probably a webinar of 2 to 3 hours, and I can tell everyone everything that, like, hey, this is how it works and this is what you need to do. But there was a huge tool problem, that how do you do it? What is it that would keep you on track, right? And that is what we wanted to bridge. But earlier in the days, like when it was pre large language models, I couldn't figure out a solution, right? We were still doing these like small projects and in the side, and then I had this job, and then yeah, we were like, okay, eventually I guess machine learning has to be so good that it can, like, actually help people with this. But until then there was no solution, because you can build like an image based model trained using traditional machine learning, where you would give it, like, hundreds of thousands of foods and their names and their macros, and it would detect. But the variety of food that people eat globally would easily surpass that hundreds of thousands. And there were models like these which would just fail. And if it doesn't work, a system doesn't work for you 100% of the times, it doesn't work. You will drop off, you will churn, right? So it's either you fall into the category of food database who's weighing your food, you're weighing your food and you're logging everything and it will work for you, or the other things just don't seem to work. And
Yeah.
people do
I
people, yeah.
Yeah, I actually do that. I fall into that category where if I'm eating a chapati, I can't write chapati. I have to write down 100 grams of atta, and then 5 grams of salt, and then some kind of ghee, 1 spoon of ghee, and then that mix up to
Wow.
chapati. And that I basically have to keep it raw, not the cooked version, or else I basically make a meal. So are you saying that in Reshape, you just take a picture and it tells exactly that this will be approximately 100
Yeah,
calories and that is quantified?
exactly. Exactly. So there is like, if the more convenient it is, the lesser accuracy it would be. But I think the intent there was that it should be accurate enough so it helps you make progress, and over time we'll refine it and make it better and better. So previously I also was just like you. I would weigh all of my ingredients, and I would just be like, logging different things into a food database. That worked for me, but only when I was at home. How do you log when you're out? There's literally no way, right? So, and but I liked eating out at times. I was going out with friends, right? Like I had like this ever changing life. So whenever my environment was in my control, then I could be fit. But that, like, assumption that you can always keep your environment in control is not sustainable, right? Like for most people, I guess, like most people will just have all of these things going on. And for me as well, I traveled to India 4 times a year, attended a bunch of weddings, I put on a lot of weight. Even though I knew what to do, I used to weigh my food. Now why
Yeah.
am I gaining all this weight, right? So my, like, just because of the tool problem, I could never know quantifiably what I was doing, right? And my mental calculations were definitely not helping. I gained like 8 10 kgs back, and it's like, okay, this thing is serious. And large language models came in. So I was just going from there, right? Like previously, these AI models could not solve the problem. Then they had the capability to. And initially, large language models only came with text capability. So because of my experience all these years building products and doing some machine learning and integrating APIs, we used a speech to text model clubbed it with large language model, so you can just describe what you're reading in natural language, and then the model would do all the sorting for you, right? And then the model would like look up into a database and then fetch everything. So you can just say, hey, I had an omelet with 3 eggs, 2 egg whites, a handful of spinach, a little bit of butter, and yo, I forgot, like I added half a tomato into it as well. So like just like natural, like talking to a friend, right? You could just describe it, and then model would do the legwork of logging for you. So we did that initially. Then models became larger and they already knew the database information. We eliminated the database, and then the model would just like guess all the macros itself. Then like, and then we started getting traction. That was like our MVP 1 of Reshape, where we had like a basic tracker where you can track your nutrition and you can just talk to the app. And we were like, eureka, it works better than any image model that has existed. For the first time in the history of mankind, now most people can know about their food, and we got super excited. Yeah, I left my job at EPAM at the time, and I was like, okay, let's do this. And I got Devanshu to pivot his services company. I was like, we're gonna build this product full time. And as amazing as he is, he was like, yeah, let's do it. And then he got into it, and then like then the journey went, and then we added like image based things. But though that's not the only thing we do, what we are trying to do here is automate the personal trainer entirely, right? We're not only solving the tool problem. Our intent and our vision is that everyone in the future will have a health or fitness assistant with them, aware about all their data at all times. Even like, it would go so far as eventually, when the technology gets better and safer, like a family doctor, right? Who has records of you, but only so much. They don't know day to day of you. They only know your clinical visits. So this there can be this superhuman capability which can exist in your pocket, that knows everything about you and can help you with any questions you have, right? So I think that that really came to us that, hey, this is amazing, this is going to happen. My intuition is very strong into this. The technology is here. We are in our internet moment. We have been practicing building products all this while. So if not now, then when? This is not like we might not get this moment again in 20 years. And we were like, okay, yeah, gotta do this. And then we went all in, and then we started doing it.
Absolutely. I mean, seeing if you see the trend, IT, then software development, then web, then mobile, then comes the age of AI, machine learning, and especially when it comes to fitness in AI, it is, some people say this is hype, some people say this is, it's not going to work because of accuracy, some people say that it's only there for a few months, a few days. So in your case, you built such an interesting problem, I mean solution to a problem. How did you, first it was built for yourself, how did you understand that this is a consumer product? How did you identify that there is a market fit for this, there is a need that people actually want, and this will be
Hmm.
used by several people?
I guess like I was constantly studying the market just naturally, but not an intention to build the product, but from a point of concern for people around me who were not happy with their like levels of fitness or health. Right, people were struggling in diabetes in my family. People were had like obesity, just like all sorts of problems. Like their joints were not healthy enough, and all of these things like really concerned me. So I think like just doing this, I understood that there are a lot of people around me who were like me trying to figure out fitness and who can't seem to figure it out. So bridging that gap, if something was to come and do it, like a personal trainer was very effective. Like for me, right, I put faith into somebody who knew the science. But most personal trainers you will find in local gyms in India, like they will give you bad advice. They don't know a lot themselves. They haven't been through a scientific education. They just became a trainer because they thought that, okay, today I'll become a trainer. And I guess like for those reasons, a lot of people were just very misguided. There was a lot of bad information, but I knew that things were simple. And if something can come in and bridge the knowledge gap, and then something can come in and bridge the tool gap, it would actually solve the problem. So that is when we understood like there is definitely a market for it. People are looking for fitness solutions. Now I will say I had not quantified the market at the time. It was just that it is ginormous. Like I think like that is what we were thinking. Like, yo, this is ginormous. Like almost like if I stop like 10 people on the streets, like six will be my customers. Right? Six will say that if there was something like this, they would use it. And that ratio kind of helped us like understand that even if we can solve this for like a million people and not a billion people, it's still worth working on, right? And that is when we had the conviction that hey, okay, can we solve this problem truly? And of course then I did it for myself and I saw the results. And the thing that you mentioned about like people are hesitant, people might think that hey, AI is just a bubble right now and it's gonna burst, it's all a fad. I will say LLMs are truly revolutionary in that sense. If it was traditional machine learning and people were advertising and like they were even before we existed that hey, click pictures of your plate and it will identify your food, try to match it with one of the things that it knows. Yes, that was a fad. It would not always work, right? What is a fad? Like it's a great marketing thing, but it doesn't really work. But what we were building was something that could truly work, that did solve a problem for people. And I guess what we didn't know as much was that it's not just the technology that you need to solve for, you also need to solve for the user experience. You're actually building something that needs to make habits. People are not clicking pictures of their food or describing their food all the time to an app. It is a new behavior that you kind of build in. And I guess that was the problem, that was the unknown. We were very confident on the technology that hey, like I ditched the kitchen scale. So like you're weighing your food right now, right? I used to do it all the time, but because of this technology that I had in my prototype, I ditched the scale. I was like, I don't need it anymore. In the sense, sure, if I would weigh my food, it'd be a little more precise, but then I cannot apply it as many times. So the convenience versus the precision kind of like, weighed off really well for me. I was getting results and I like, if I wanted to cut, I could cut. If I wanted to bulk, I could bulk. I was like, okay, this is predictable. Technology works. Now, how do I get more and more people to a point where I am in the usage of the product? And I guess that is where the journey went. So yeah, definitely not a fad. People will always criticize things, right? Like even if we advertise or like put posts on social media, somebody would say it's never gonna be precise, and I'm like, okay, but try it out. Like tell me where it is not precise, right? And I guess
Even
that's it.
even if I add a little bit of sugar, basically I have to. It might be a little bit a plus and minus. So yeah, and
You can add
everybody has their
hints.
own.
Actually, no, you can consider for that sugar. Like you can click a picture of your food, and you can like sometimes I click a picture of my coffee and say, hey, I didn't add any sugar but Splenda in it, right? So now that's it. Now it's accurate, right? I can tell it like it was half a cup of milk, because like in liquid and homogeneous mixtures, it's very hard to identify. Sometimes things might be, you might like order a salad from outside which might have like meat underneath and like a lot of veggies on the top or whatever, right? You can tell it like, hey, this chicken underneath this. The thing is that the approximations are very good, and we did a lot of work to like make the models work such that they were approximating really well. Like if you click a picture of a plate which has some cutlery on the side, the model considers the size of the cutlery and then the size of the plate and the food, and like it would consider all the environment around it to guess what it is. You can even scan like nutrition labels, you can scan Starbucks labels, which is like grande iced coffee, like sure, and everything works. So it has to work 100% of the times.
That is such a convenience to a person, as you mentioned, the last layer of the pyramid, where people are unable to even follow because of their busy schedule. And this
Hmm.
will make their life so easy. Since you talked about the UX, I
Well,
was
one thing
actually
I
thinking.
also want to say, like, though there are two more layers to the pyramid just for like people to visualize. There
Mhm.
are also people who will say too far from me, who are like they don't try for fitness. They don't. There's no intent at the moment because they just think that it's too far from them, and underneath that, there's life's too hard. So I guess, and the reason I'm specifying these things is that you have to understand your customer. You're not going to be solving the problem for everyone, and if you try to do that, you will find yourself banging your head against the wall very soon, right? So you have to understand your customer, and I guess like we get a little bit of do what I cans who just want a little more convenience and a little bit of too far from me's, but primarily we tend to cater to the drop offs.
I think people basically climb up the ladder of the pyramid
Skill.
as they
Exactly.
intro. So
Yeah.
it's the first thing. Take the first step, move up, then take the next step, then move up. Do it in a bit and slow pieces. That will make it your
Exactly.
journey easy.
Exactly.
So you were talking about the UI UX thing. So I remember one of the things I was reading about Steve Jobs and his passion about, or his theory on customer experience was completely rooted in the belief that customer satisfaction comes from intuitive, seamless experience, and that the details matter far more than what company as a whole realizes. In your case, since you were two friends, um, and he approached the customer experience with a blend of technology, simplicity, and simple design. So, talking about you blending AI with the technology and the human nutritional factor with the exercises. So, how did you build or blend this product with the human touch to it or the customer experience to it? What was your thought process going on at that time, or is it like one size fits all?
Thank you for jogging my memory to the time when I was thinking about these things, and I'm still thinking about these things. It actually kind of gave me goosebumps when you talked about Steve Jobs, because, his biography by Walter Isaacson was one of the most impactful things I have read in building consumer products. I was never an Apple fan, honestly, because I was a person who wanted more customizability. Something like I wanted to do more with the tech I have in hands, but it gave me an empathy to understand most people, right? Like, it gave me a perspective from where he was thinking. You can have all of this complex technology, but if nobody would use it, it's useless, right? And if you put a very simple intuitive layer on top that does the job, and people think, hey, this is so simple, probably didn't take a lot of work to build it, I think you're doing a good job, right? And I guess that is what I kind of learned from, just Steve Jobs. And it was always the case for us. I've always been a student of psychology as well. I always read a bunch of psychology books, whatever I could come across. My first nonfiction book was actually, has a quick plug, Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. And I read that in third year of university, and it changed my perspective on just reading books. I was reading some fiction here and there. Books were a thing of enjoyment for me. That is when I was like, hey, books have so much treasure in them. I could read 600 pages and get so much perspective from a Nobel laureate, right? So, reading that and a lot of different things, I was always conscious of human psychology and understood how much information can we process. And even the smartest of us, right? Like, we can think that, hey, we're all this smart, like, but there is a certain context that you can carry in your mind at a time, right? Some more, some less, but there is always a finite context. So it was always a thing for us. One thing that we were doing was like simplifying information. There are like hundreds of things I can tell you about a plate of food. What is important to you? What is important for your goals, right? And that is why we kind of abstracted a lot of macros, and we'd show calories and protein and fiber on top. We're like, yes, these three things matter for your goals right now, right? General guidelines about the carbs and fat will be okay. Telling you to eat more greens would be okay to start with, right? Before we could just build a lot of deep analysis into your macros. And I guess that is how we were simplifying first information. Many investors would ask us that, hey, how much time do people spend on your app? And I'm like, actually, I don't want to measure that metric to maximize it. I want to use that to be just enough. Meaning that if they're spending too much time on my app, then I'm not very convenient to use. Right? Initially, at least when we were just building like a food and workout tracking system, we're like, I just wanted them to be quickly in and out. Right? And that is something that I wanted to optimize for. So we would optimize for speed, we would optimize for intuitiveness, that they would come in, they'd see a clear button, they'll click the mic, they'll say their thing, and they're off doing their thing. They'll come in, click the camera, click a picture, everything is done for them, and they're out doing their thing and just continuing with their lives. So that convenience and intuitiveness is extremely important. It is we are very big on design, and anybody who is building consumer products has to be, right? You have to get the core flow done as simply as possible, right? If you're trying to overcomplicate it, they're like, yeah, no, do this and do this and do this. Yeah, it kind of breaks. But also, I came I went through a lot of learning in the process, that often what I would think, I was initially trying to minimize the number of steps, but then I realized that you also have to give a linear journey, meaning that if you give them too many things to do, even though like tracking food is one step, they're confused by all the other information around, which I am trained to use. So I didn't see it for months. I was like, okay, like here's like food tracking, here's workout tracking, here's steps, and a user will just get, after onboarding, get thrown into this app that can do 10 things, and they're like, okay, but where do I start? I was trying to minimize the number of steps, that everything is on one screen, right? Like you don't have to navigate through screens. But it is good for a trained user. But a user who's just coming in to understand, they want to see least number of options, right? And because I did not ever go through a formal design education, I guess maybe I was just missing it because of my blind spots there. And yeah, a lot of learning just comes just when you give the product in the hands of the users. Like, hey, why didn't you do anything? And they're like, so many things to do, I don't know where to start. I was like, okay, I get you, I get it. And then we started solving for that. So yeah, definitely very important. And also not a one dimensional solution. You have to think about a lot of different things, like time on the app. You have to think about how intuitive the journey is, how easy it is, how do you activate a user, meaning that they understand how the entire system works, and then how they can continue to use it seamlessly. And all of those things are very important. And we're launching a bunch of features rapidly to still make it easier and easier. Right now you can add like a widget to your home screen, and you don't even have to open the app. Just like use the mic from there, or click the camera, and it just
They have become so
automatically
helpful.
exactly, just making it easier and easier and easier.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, will AI in fitness replace the personal trainers and the nutrition that you just, the application that you're building?
hmm it's an interesting question. I do think about it a lot. Nutritionists, I will say slowly and gradually, but in the long term, they will. It will. It surely will. What does a nutritionist do? A nutritionist has knowledge that they've gathered through their education. They get inputs from the user, which is their data, their medical history, information that they self report, etc. They club this knowledge and information, and they will generate some output. They will tell you what to do, right? I think AI can do a lot of this. Now you have to be safe. It cannot do it right now. If there is a health condition, medical condition, there's way too much risk for AI to be dictating things. But I have strong conviction that we can make these systems, like, safe enough and complete enough that they can solve most of the cases. Now, what will happen though is that a lot of the people who specialize in nutrition will help in keeping these models in check, training these models. I think that is where the human value will start to come in, right? And that personal touch. But models are also changing a lot of that too. Like now you have, like, this real time voice thing by OpenAI, which talks like, the voice from
Human.
movie Her, right? Like it sounds like a human, it has emotion, right? So I think that those gaps are bridging as well. So I will say, first, safety is important. Second, that personal touch. I will say AI will tend to make progress towards both of the things. Nothing completely in the short term, but in the longer term, a lot of it would be done, if not everything. And
Looking
about
forward to
fitness
it.
trainers, I would also add about fitness trainers. One limitation right now we have is that we don't have a very good system or technology in place. And not just us, the world of technology doesn't have the system developed so far which can detect your training posture during exercises, right? So if I'm doing an exercise, am I doing it right? Right, that feedback can come from if there was like vision installed around you. But generally when you're at a gym, you don't have that equipment installed around you. So there is no convenient way at the moment to get the posture just right, which is incredibly important for progress and to prevent injuries. And I think that is where the gap is, and that is where a personal trainer actually comes in and helps. So I do think that personal trainers are here to stay for a long, long time. But
I
AI
see.
can solve a lot of things. But once you know how to do it, once you've trained, probably people can come out and then they can use these like autopilot tools.
Interesting. So, Amol, I'm going to pick your brain because you wore so many different hats. You are an entrepreneur. You have been a product manager. You took the design hat. You took the development hat. You took the testing app. You took the hat. You wore the hat of a consumer. So many different hats. So, if I have to ask you to wear a hat of product manager and help me understand, if I am going to build an app which thinking or assuming that I have got great ideas like most people do, uh, but I don't know how to execute it.
Hmm.
I do know that maybe I can execute it, maybe I don't know how to execute it, but I don't have money. I completely
Hmm.
don't have money. I understand that we can go to investors, but how do we still get to that execution level if I have a lot of ideas that are generating in my head? I see opportunities, but I don't have money.
Yes. So generally, I would think that the problem you're trying to solve is in the domain of technology. It has something to do with technology, as most things do today. So, with that assumption, there needs to be somebody who builds in the team. Now, it can be you yourself and you don't have money, or you can have somebody who can partner with you in the journey, as I have been lucky to have someone, right? I was always this cloud guy, but I was not building apps or websites day to day, right? So I needed someone who can execute on that loop. And that is where Devanshu like comes in and helped a lot. And eventually, I also started contributing to the app when I went full time. But yeah, somebody has to build the product, so that is, I think, most essential. So if you can find someone, which is also not easy to do, I think, like, one advice that I'm not able to give founders so much is like, or at least like give a solution to the problem, that how do I get a co-founder? I'm like, yeah, that's hard. I don't know what to do. Like, you have to develop a relationship for a long time, build that conviction, have them invest their time. So it takes something to get a nice co-founder. But if it's just you yourself, then there's still a lot of good news, that these AI tools are very capable to be your co-pilot, right? They can be alongside you as you try to build out a product. And another thing I will say is that something very simple, an iteration one of a product, is extremely simple, right? It is possible for somebody to not have technology experience and still be able to launch an MVP in a week, right? That's reasonable. So what I did, like, just to get brush up my understanding on web development, full stack, and the modern technologies, because during my training days in Capgemini we learned like Java and like some older stack, and now people build more with React and Node and these TypeScript based technologies. So I did a boot camp on Udemy, cost like 10-20 bucks, right? You take a boot camp, you do a bunch of it, you get like the basic fundamentals in place. Then you have ChatGPT opened up on the side. Help me set a boilerplate for a React project that does this, right? And it will start writing things for you. And now the context windows are increasing so much. Initially, we had to tell it functions that it could write, just small pieces of code. But now, like, AI is so capable that you can have much larger, an entire file written out by AI, right? So you really have to be this person who's the orchestrator, who instructs the model well and then copies and
Yeah.
pastes into the IDE. That's it. So that is what I would suggest. Like, have that execution capability done. Don't go out raising funds to hire a team, because if it's a first time entrepreneur, they don't know how to hire a team. Honestly, they don't know who the right candidate is. If they haven't done this before, and if they don't have a co-founder, then somebody has to build. And the shorter or the more dense the knowledge is initially, I think I'm meant to use dense, not shorter. A lot of knowledge is good, but like density is very important, and as close as it is, the better, because you can iterate really fast, right? You can just do it yourself. So that is it. If you have an idea, you think, hey, it'd be cool if there was a website that did this, or it'd be cool if there was an app that did this, use something like GPT-4 or Claude and have it help you, and you're able to do it. So, but do it. And that is very essential. Get started. What people spend most of the time on is the time to start, staring at
They
the
don't get
whiteboard.
started. Yeah, I think
Don't get
that is
started.
one of the key thing that I was going to actually ask before was, you have an idea in mind, you got the right people with you, but if you don't get started, it's useless. You won't even get the funds. So I think
Hmm.
that's a very interesting piece of advice. So Amol, taking to the next step, like if you wear a product hat and I got an idea, I got the execution as you suggested. I got my
Yeah.
first iterations. I've got the money that someone is ready to sponsor. I got myself some money to sponsor. What is the next thing that a product owner should do if
Hmm.
he thinks that the product is really solid from according to him?
Yeah. I'll give the best advice that I give people. Launch on day zero. What does that mean? How can you launch on day zero before you have anything? That means have the entire feedback loop complete on day zero and then start building. Meaning that you should be able to release to someone, be it like 5 people, right? That can use it as you are writing code. And there's this term called CI/CD, right? Continuous integration, continuous development in the world of just software. And I think that is very crucial. In websites it's easier. For stores you have to do some work to get your app in through, but internal testing is generally easy. There's not like too many checks in place for internal testing across both the primary operating systems, Apple and Android. So I guess, like, setting up that pipeline is the most important thing you could do. And trust me, so many times founders ignore that advice. They're like, oh, I'm going to build it for 3 months and then launch. You're going to waste a lot of time for those 3 months. You're going to be building things, or actually, your team might be building things, and that nobody is seeing and nobody is experiencing. You have no feedback coming in. Just useless. I have zero defense against not launching on day zero. Launch it, give it to a set of folks. I think that is one I will say. Second thing, identify that core flow you want to start with. There might be thousands of things, right, that you want to build, and you have this big vision of changing the world. But what is that one thing that will keep your engine going, right? For us it was nutrition tracking to start with. We're like, hey, we're going to make nutrition tracking really good, right? And I guess that is where you have the vision. Like, I didn't name my app something to do with nutrition because my mission was to reshape people, right? Like, just fitness training. But I did start with that core flow and slowly started adding things. Now you can track your strength training workouts. Now you can generate your strength training workouts. Then you can integrate with your smart devices. So identify that core flow. Another thing I will say is, like, if it's just like, a small team, like a single person or 2 people, you sometimes don't need, like, a crazy project management software. But generally, as the team starts to grow, set up like a project management software and a system in place. Spend a lot of time building the system, right, of how you qualify the requirements and how they flow into the system and get delegated and get done and get for review and go to launch in place. So spend a lot of time figuring that out for your context, and then trust the system, and then slowly improve if you see bottlenecks further. I think, like, these things, like structuring your own ideas and your approach, helps immensely to execute efficiently and have predictable results. Again, like I said, I've seen founders spend like a year or more without ever launching. Like, hey, I don't find the right developer, I don't find this, I don't like. That's a huge problem. You haven't launched yet. You haven't, like, and if somebody's not working out, you need to change. You need to like, the most successful startups are the ones that iterate the fastest, who can change the fastest. That's currently one of our, I will say, advantages being a startup building this thing. Like, for bigger companies, it's so much harder to get something out. For us, we do like 2 releases a day at times. We're like, yeah, let's do it, and we just do 2 releases a day for an app. Can you imagine? Sometimes I use, like, am I always seeing like, this update button on the app? I'm like, because you're gonna get a new feature or some
I do
improvement.
get your updates very frequently. Sometimes
See,
once a day, twice a day. Yeah, I do see.
exactly.
And I also remember, since I'm a constant user of your app, some of the other time, I have noticed your previous release with the voice. I actually tried the voice. I spoke something and I got my nutrition. So I do remember when you were speaking about it. I do remember about it.
Glad you
Yeah,
tried it out in the early days. Thank you.
yeah, I did. So Amol, have you talked about the systems in place for project management as the team grows, but for the project, not for the project, but for the product management.
Hmm.
Did you use any tools to
Hmm.
define your product vision, your mission,
Hmm.
your roadmap, the
Hmm.
customer journey, the
Yeah.
UI, UX part? What tool did you use, and what
Hmm.
all things or techniques that you applied to make sure that your product is, of course, you're launching it on day zero, you're launching it every
Hmm.
day, you're having a feedback, but how did you make sure that your feedback is right, they are iterated,
Yeah,
they are
perfect.
valid?
Yeah, so great point. I think like that's one part I missed because I was speaking more in the context of very early days and you have like 10 people using it and you can just get qualitative feedback to start with because you don't have data that is quantitatively significant, but it is very important to know what you're measuring, right? Like if you're building like a nutrition tracker, you're probably measuring how many people are logging meals every single day, right? How many active users, what percentage of users are active, how many people who get onboarded end up logging a meal. So what is your activation rate, right? Maybe how many meals they log in a day, right? Were there any errors? All of these things can be quantified. And it is also very important to have like something that can quantify and give you that proper feedback. So thank you for that question, and I use Mixpanel for that a lot. Heavily endorse it because it's so easy to use. I've used it in a bunch of products in the past, so I just knew what to put in place. And that was also a day zero thing. We set up Mixpanel right away, even though we had less data to start with. Eventually we went from 10 to 100 people, right? Then 100 to 1,000 people, then 10,000, then 50,000, right? So mixed panel was always in place and we'd have these metrics constantly coming in. So I will say that is very important. So have your delivery pipeline set up properly so you can get to the users. Have these analytics put in place so you can get all this user analytics feedback. And I guess that's primarily it. And then you were asking about what workflows would I use for product management. Initially, when you're very small, you're doing the design yourself. Maybe you have a design background, maybe you don't. I tried like hiring some design interns that I would guide. So I would be probably the chief designer. Even though I didn't have a design background, I understood my product well. So I could tell that, hey, things should be like this. And probably there I was acting like a product manager. I was drawing up wireframes and asking them to like, okay, can you polish this up and create something that the developers can implement? So my general workflow is that the product manager is thinking through what do we want to build. Product manager is the head of change, right? Like they have to decide what will change, and change can be anything. Something existing that is now different, or something that doesn't exist but now comes in, right? So they are like any requirement is a request for change. So product manager will find first the fundamental value that they want to deliver. So think from the user's perspective, work backwards towards, okay, based on serving this user need or this kind of improvement, these are the things that can possibly be done. Now ideate on and structure those thoughts, right? So I do a lot of brain dump. So whenever I'm thinking of something, I write a product plan. I have this format that has evolved over time. I start with the overview. Users are not logging their workouts enough, right? And like then I would go into the brain dump section that, okay, it's probably because of these 7 reasons, right? They're too confused, they don't know what to do, they keep forgetting about it. And that I'll just write like, just brain dump of what is possible. So I'm developing my hypothesis. After I'm done developing my hypothesis, I will tackle each hypothesis by, okay, how can I validate the hypothesis, right? Can I and all of these hypotheses, like, will come up with some levers that you can move to like, remind them of the workout. You will start sending notifications at that workout time, have them set up like, when you can work out, things like that. So you would just come up with some experiments to validate the hypothesis. These experiments will result in backlog for often for the design team. Generally, like, product changes would have something to do on the front end for the from the because it's a consumer product, something's got to change there. And then it would also come up with a backlog for the technical team. So product manager is kind of owning that requirement, right? They describe things enough for the technical team and the design team, communicate properly. Then it goes into development, right? Designers done with their thing, technical team takes the design, takes all your instructions and build it, release it to internal testing where you experience it. Then you put it in launch and measurement stage where now users are using it and you kind of see the change in metric, and it's still all the product manager's responsibility to measure all of these analytics, right? And then kind of come back and report back on the experiment that we changed this lever and this changed, right? So this is the entire product workflow that I use. And then slowly you would as a founder might start becoming a bottleneck, and you might need to delegate some of these things, right? Initially you're doing the design, you're doing the technology, you're doing the measurement, but then we got a designer on board, started getting some like um, them to take on the design tasks. uh, the technology part I moved away from, like, primarily I still participate a lot of in the architectural discussions, but I don't code day to day. So the technology team takes care of that. Then we got a product analyst. We had interest from someone who was interested in working with us, so we got a product analyst on board, and their job would be that I will lay out a rough plan, right? And then I will move on to doing other things like raising funds and talking to customers and whatnot, right? And they will refine the information in those experiments and draft that backlog, right? A lot of what a business analyst does, right? They are responsible for cleaning up all the noise, get the most substance out of it, structure it, and create that backlog. And they would also set up the mixed panel boards to measure the results of the experiments, right? So a product analyst can do that. So these are the key functioning things in the entire pipeline.
My next question was about, did you ever hire a business analyst? So I'm glad you answered that question, that initial times you don't actually need that large of a team because you're going very small, you're trying to validate the product. But as the team grows, you are very confident about the product, you basically start to hire a team. So did you find hiring a product analyst slash business analyst was very useful to you?
Yes, if you find the right person. I think it is the hardest hire you can make, because you know formal education through a business analysis course, I will say, or product analysis course, can only help so much if the person doesn't have the right aptitude, right, um, like subject matter expertise at the time, or the tendency to build that subject matter expertise. So somebody who's a good first principles thinker, because they are responsible for cleaning the noise. What if they leave out some important information? It can be disastrous, right? It can be really inefficient in the entire workflow. What if they're not able to communicate well? So all of, like, a business analyst or product analyst is a very crucial role. I took my longest time to get somebody on board, and I very recently did, which is coming out to be really good now, because now I can draft more overview plans, because I am still the vision guy, right? Where am I taking this product, right? And it's important for founders from 0 to 1, a lot further ahead as well, to be very close to the product vision and close to the product, right? So I'm still that guy, but because there are so many different parallels that we want to build in, I have helping hands that I can trust to draft a lot of these things. So they do a lot of research, right? So let's say, I'll give you an example. So we are adding more micros analysis in the app. So we've done a lot with the macros. Our users are getting a lot of value out of it. More than 1,000 people have lost weight and all of that, nice things, right? But now we want to tell them more about their micros as well. We're concerned that some people might just try to maintain a caloric deficit and then miss out on essential micros, which are very important for your immune system and your day-to-day feeling, functioning. So we're doing that. So I wrote a micros implementation overview, and I got someone who I told them that I have done this work, right? Like I talked to my product analyst, told them that, okay, now just draft the entire plan. I need this to be implemented in the next 2 weeks, right? So whatever it takes to get our phase one out the door. So now they are trying to take that information. They're trying to figure out, okay, how many micros can exist in all the foods, which ones are important, how, what is the targets to set for different kinds of people with different builds and sex, etc., their health conditions as well. And now there is like so much information, right? There are like 20 something data points that I can deliver to them, but they can't consume 20 something data points. So how do you distill that information into natural language and give this user a summary, right? Now coming up with the wireframes, coming up with the We use Asana for project management, so they're like, okay, what tasks need to be created. All of this is immensely helpful, because now I do come in, but for review, I'm like, hey, what about this, what about this, and yeah, okay, like, yeah, I got that, we're aligned. So I didn't have to spend all of this time doing this, because I have somebody I can trust. Good for me that I have somebody with 10 years of experience as a fitness trainer, been training people in India, in Canada, still a personal trainer for people. So because they have that expertise, I have like more faith in them, at times more than me for certain things, right? That, okay, you probably know this better. So they kind of like, bring that subject matter expertise, the structured thinking, the first principles approach, the dedication, and like, the seriousness to know that it's very impactful. Because if the backlog is going out the door, and the entire team is going to be spending time building something, right? And if it doesn't connect in the end, then like, we ended up wasting a lot of time and resources. So yeah, I think that is very, very helpful, but it happened much later, and I think people should be very careful with this, because it is of high impact and high consequence.
Yeah, great to know about that. So you hiring a product analyst was very beneficial to you, and you mentioned that they should have a lot of good qualities. They should be your right hand, or basically a glue to the project, or someone who you can trust. So, and you also mentioned that was the toughest to hire. Any specific skill set besides being a glue to the project or someone who is very trustable? Did you actually look into, you mentioned formal education. Did you actually look into while hiring a product analyst slash BA?
Yeah, actually, I don't really know what he graduated in. That's a good question. So I guess that doesn't matter so much to me, but it can help. Like, so they did some program management course after coming to Canada. So I had that, like, okay, you've been like into some management, right? And they had some project management experience from India. So like, okay, you are like a manager who's delegated things in the past, right? Who's kind of organized their thoughts and planning. So that is definitely useful. The two fundamental things that I would be looking for is the analytical skills, right? Like, what is your aptitude like to think of things in a structured way? Second is communication, because now you're communicating with technical teams in their language and design teams in their language, and probably with users in their language, right? So you have to have very good communication skills, and anybody who's a good thinker generally becomes a good communicator too. Maybe not in all languages. Some people might like, I'm not a good communicator in French, right? So I might, but it doesn't mean that I'm not a good communicator. I can speak in English, I can speak in Hindi. So in some language that the team can understand, they should be a good communicator in, right? So clear thinking and aptitude, good communication is what I'm looking for. Now wherever that comes from, it can often come from engineering. I've seen that people from engineering backgrounds have that structured approach to thinking, because physics is physics, right? Like, if you've gone through a physics education, it's, you have to be structured, you have to go step by step. There's no qualitative, and nothing is qualitative in like physics, it's all quantitative. So I think that engineering experience really helps. Like, somebody from a programming background can be good as well, but often many people who are good in these things might not be good communicators, right? So yeah, I think like people from business backgrounds too, who are clear thinking, who have good communication skills, can fulfill this role really, really well. And then open to learning, right? If you're close to learning, you're not going to move. In a sense, like, you will always see new things, right? Like, and if you're not seeing new things, then I don't know why that job exists and why it is not automated already, right? So you have to have that tendency to be looking for things and learning new things and trying to find opportunities and like bridging the gaps and find deep satisfaction doing that. I think these are the core skills that I would look for in a product analyst. And I guess product analyst and business analyst differ a little bit in the sense that for business analysts who are operating in a system that already exists and they're trying to solve a problem, they have good communication with the business teams, and they're trying to automate their workflow or do something in their workflow that can be improved. The difference in product analysis is that there's a lot of like, like it's get capturing the requirements is often not very structured. Yeah, it's very chaotic. All the people are, there are different signals coming, and there's like all the mixed panel data, and there's all the support, and they're talking to users. All of these things are coming in, and you have to kind of figure out what should be the requirements from there. And I guess that product manager and the product analyst kind of work in cohesion to like kind of
Yeah.
prioritize
I've
that.
been I've been a BA for a very long time. I've been very recently into product owner, product management. So, having been into that journey, I would say I heard the word product analyst in this stream for few times now. Whatever roles that you have specified is a mixture of a BA, product owner
Yeah, yeah,
kind of role.
absolutely.
So, what happens is you said it very right, analytical thinking, communication, very must. However, problem solving. Number three, it is very important that you are facilitating those sessions with the technical team and the product management team and making sure everything is aligned and traced to its completion and its testing. So I have been in this position several times, learning very important. I have been the consulting firm. I know I worked in several domains. For me, moving from one domain to another is not at all
Yeah,
difficult for me. Like I'm like quick, whether it is capital markets, whether it is
yeah,
insurance, whether it is this, I'm like jump on, get the work
yeah,
rolling from day one. Just because I have
exactly,
great analytical thinking, I can
exactly.
communicate well, I can ask the right question, and
Right,
then get started. That's what people want.
pretty much.
Solvers.
Exactly, exactly that.
That was about the BA or product analyst, but what about the product manager? Now that you will scale up, you will want to hire a new product manager, or maybe you want to hire people who owns
Hmm.
different part of the product. What skill would you look for as a product manager?
It's also so hard. As I raise funds and I will have to hire someone for these things, yeah, you need somebody with like, now a higher level. So they can do what a product analyst can do, but now they need to participate more into the requirements prioritization, right? That if I'm doing something, then where am I taking this? So they have to have a vision, right? Like, okay, so let's say I hire somebody to do product management for the sleep in the app, right? All these devices that are integrating with Reshape, and then we want to do deeper level of sleep analysis. Then they have to do a lot of research on what things can be done. They have to do competition analysis. They have to look at, okay, whatever exists in the market. So put things in like okay, this is what we know today, this is what we are going towards, right? And come up with some kind of backlog and then help prioritize that backlog and execute that. So I think the product analyst is helping primarily with like just drafting the mixed panel boards and like taking the overview from a product plan, and then coming up with like refining different things and creating tasks. Product manager is responsible for coming up with that overview. Okay, what is it, the vision, what where am I going to take this product? And product manager has the ownership, right? They have ownership that okay, sleep should be working good. Most people should activate into sleep, right? People should be connecting their devices, whoever has one. Now people should be coming in and getting value. How are you measuring feedback? Are you showing pop-ups that whatever way you can measure feedback, right? Is their sleep score increasing over time? What does the sleep score mean, right? How do you calculate and infer a sleep score? So all of these requirements, like all responsibilities of a product manager. And like let's say as a founder of the company or somebody in the executive positions, I'd be taking reports on from them, right? Like, okay, why is sleep not working, right? Like, or why is like how is it working well, and how we can take this further ahead. I think all of that answers have to come from the product manager, and it is so hard to hire someone for that. I've tried. I've tried delegating bits and pieces, but again, like it's not very easy. So I always like do like a soft engagement, and if it works out, but generally very hard to find someone that can actually like uh, who's a good big vision thinker, right? So they can operate with a lot of information and a lot of noise too, but then also are a good simplifier, right? They can simplify things and then like have quick measurements and like make sure that like we have the fastest iterations possible. And then product manager is also responsible to set timelines too. I would say like I don't believe in having like lots of project managers, at least in like earlier stages of the company. So they are like setting up timelines, and they need to report to whoever they're reporting to, like chief product officer or somebody other in the executive suite, to okay, that there is a bottleneck in engineering, right? Like I am drafting things, and my product analyst is done with the all these project tasks, but design team is not picking up enough, or the engineering team is moving slow. So reporting to the higher levels so they can arrange for the resources or just change timelines, right? So all of that is the responsibility of the product manager. They will take ownership of a certain thing and help improve starts there. And for that, they need to understand what does retention mean, and all of this would come in their experience earlier as a product analyst, right? What does retention mean? How do we calculate retention? Different types. How do we plot funnels? What funnels are good? What are the different strategies you can take, right, to get feedback and get data? So if only 10% of your users are activating, then do we talk to users and get the feedback, or do we start running experiments right away? What exactly do we do? And all of these strategies they have to own, so they're the complete owner of a particular section of the product, if not the entire product itself.
That's very interesting. So, Amol, let's say I raise $1 million and I have my day zero ready. I have a product in hand, or maybe I'm going to be building a product. I have got a $1 million. What do I build now? Whether it should be an AI related product or non AI related product.
Hmm, interesting question. So I will always say, if you got $1 million from someone, you probably pitched a very good business case. But let's say you won a lottery and now have $1 million, then I would not spend the $1 million, and I'd go out looking for an opportunity. Always work backwards from the opportunity or the problem you're trying to solve to what tools you need to solve the problem. AI is big today, yes, right? Because it is capable of solving a lot of problems, but not all problems have to be solved by AI, right? Sometimes it's just hardware that you need, sometimes it's just simple, for payroll management, right? You can just build a web app or a phone application. So, which might have bits and pieces of AI in it. Though it is the cool new buzzword to say, and everyone's talking about AI for many good reasons, we shouldn't chase AI for the sake of it. So, until you have a problem defined, so whenever whenever you're pitching to investors, one thing that you do is like a problem statement. How big is the problem? What is the severity of the problem? Right? And that kind of results in what is the size of the problem as well, right? What is the net impact of that problem, and is it worth solving? If it's a huge problem for 10 people, probably not a big market, but if the people are really close to you, might put in some effort to solve it, but you might not make a market out of it or business out of it. So that is where you really need to look, like, what is the size of the problem, right? Let's take Reshape for example, right? What is the size of the problem? 200 million people and more are suffering from obesity or are overweight, and looking for fat loss solutions in US and Canada, right? So not kinds of tells them, right, for it is a lot of people. They're looking for fat loss solutions that helps, that affects their lifestyles and their health, and it is just affects their overall quality of life. So there's certain severity, and that is how you come up with like a problem statement. And that is very important to know what is that problem. And if you don't see a problem, spend 3 more years and put that money in some kind of fixed deposit, right, where it is safe and earning some interest. So when you are ready to deploy some resources into it, you know that you are deploying it in the right place. Never always run frugal, because I think one thing I've learned really is you can be a company who's raised $100 million, $200 million, and still die in 3 months. We see that happening a lot. Either way, you think that, oh, they've made it, they've raised $100 million or $200 million, but if the burn is high and the demand doesn't match up to the supply, you're toast, you're done, right? So that is why running lean, right, initially is a great trait, right? Like if you have $1 million, spend, still be very miser and spending that, not too much, don't affect the quality. If you can hire a good designer, you should hire a good designer, right? If you can hire somebody, product management generally founders would do initially in the very early stage. You've just done day zero, so do it initially yourself. But if you are hiring a product manager, yes, it's an important role. Understand how to create a company. I was actually going to do a series of videos just on how to get a startup set up, because like, how do shares work, how do you distribute equity between founders, what is an ESOP pool, how do you give stocks from an ESOP pool. So you're going to be offering like cash flow plus some ESOP compensation to your early employees. So yeah, like identify what are those key roles. And one exercise I really do there is that I plot a business architecture diagram, which I think business analysts might be familiar with. And what that is primarily is, okay, what are the different core functions of my business? There's going to be a business core component that primarily aims to make a lot of profit, right? That's what a business wants. Now it's going to tell the product team, and sometimes it's all the same person, but like if I was separating domains, it will tell the product domain that, hey, I want to increase revenue. How will that happen? Right? And now the product team has to figure out, okay, to increase revenue, you probably need to deliver a lot of core value to the users and they should be willing to pay for it. So for that, this we should build these X number of things and then go from there, right? And then all of these X number of things are now going to go to the design team and the tech team, right? Tech team is going to build things and then somebody needs to test it. So probably there's going to be a tester in place, and then a launch happens. Similarly, now that you've built this out, somebody needs to market it, and then there's a marketing function in your company, right? And marketing can be done organically, like you can just have a lot of content that you're pushing out on social media, or it can be paid ads, right? You're running ads on different platforms. So that needs to be in place. Now the marketing guy is like, hey, I need somebody to build the ads, right? Be it like, somebody that's making a video or like an image banner kind of ads, so different kinds of ads that you can post in different kind of platforms. So you might need somebody for creatives, right? I'm literally telling you everything that I have in my business, right? So you need somebody to build creatives, and then that is like a domain. And the creative team might need like a graphic designer, it might need like a video editor as well. Then there's an operations team, right? Like or operations domain, which kind of deals with everything that is legal, accounting, onboarding, HR kind of activities. All of these things are like primarily essential parts like of a business. And of course it would keep expanding as the company grows up, and then you hire like a CMO, chief marketing officer, chief people officer, and you just have just like all these responsibilities delegated, starting with like maybe one or two people doing all of these things, right? Like I run an ad.
Initially, the days are tough.
Yeah,
As we scale up, it becomes easy.
yeah, like for me, right? Like I, for the longest time I couldn't figure out how to go to the market, and like in late Feb, I shot an ad with this phone, right? I just like put the camera and this mic right here, and I was like, hey, do you know I can tell you everything about your nutrition. I just built the ad, I ran the ad myself, and it still to this day continues to acquire users for me for really cheap, right? So often like and I also built the product, I had the vision. So like as a founder, you're going to do a lot of things initially, and it is a feature, not a bug, because I deeply believe that do it once then delegate, right? At least do it at least once and then delegate, right? So how it's done, so you can help mentor someone. And in the early days you might not be able to hire a C-suite executive from an existing company, right? Can't just go to like a big corporation right now and poach their CMO, because I don't have that money, right? So if I'm going to hire somebody more junior to them, I need to be able to mentor them. And I think like doing that once kind of helps me understand how it's done, right? And then they come in and like bring of course add a lot of value from their side to it. So I guess identify your business, right? What are you going to build, and is it worth building? Second, identify the domains that you might need in different times, right? Set up some timelines, like do start with a small release. Never go live with like, okay, I have these 1,000 value propositions I want to give to the user. Useless, just gonna waste your time in delusion, right? Come up with one, maybe two things that your users might really care about. Launch it, give it to them and see their response, and then let that machine, like of the feedback loop, drive the entire system, and then you go out to build. Also, it's one suggestion I can give is, if you can I have a unique advantage that my CTO is currently based out of India, and the team works with him in the office, so I'm able to keep my expenses really low. If I was to hire one engineer in Bay Area, that's equivalent to supporting like 20 engineers, or at least 10 engineers in India, right? So think of that, like where is the value? Do you need that cutting edge expertise that you're spending money on, or are you just saying that, hey, they're ex Google, ex Microsoft, so let's hire them and our startup is going to go off the top? No,
It
like I
won't work
can't
that
say
way.
that enough. It will not work because somebody who's been like a backend engineer and like Google for like 10 years, they don't know how to launch an app, right? Like they haven't done that before. So understand the skill set that you're looking for. Yes, they're smart. Yes, they'll figure out. But is that worth paying them 20 times as much money, right? Like I think that is where the question is going to come. And what is that value? And they might be a good co-founder. I'm not saying that like, just disregard the credentials. But what I'm trying to say is that be frugal, be calculative in where you're spending your resources. Running lean is a feature, not a bug, right? It's not what your situation throws at you on you as a bad thing. It is something that's deep, you should deeply cherish. And I've come to realize it now. Earlier, what I thought it would take me half $1 million to build, we built that in like much fraction of a cost. So I think yeah, all those are good things. So just spend money wisely, be structured, and you're gonna get there.
So, Amol, you have been an entrepreneur for such a long time. I'm sure you have highs, days that are high, the days that are low. So, how do you stay motivated throughout your journey?
Many people ask me that, and I generally just tend to answer that like the mission is bigger than me, and long as I'm capable of like keeping my mental health in check, in the sense that it doesn't detail, I'm always going to have high moments and low moments. Some days I wake up and I'm like, oh, we didn't make much revenue today, oh that sucks. But that's okay, right? That's just signals, right? And you respond to signals. But the ability is to just take it as signal and not be reactive, right? And like, oh my god, what's going to happen, and not go in panic, because the mission is big. Now yes, the problem is not solved today, but that I do think that this problem is worth solving. I do want this to be my life's work. It makes it very easy for me. I've never questioned that maybe I should stop doing this. Not a single day. Because I guess, like, when you are very passionate about something, generally, and you're smart that your consequences are low. I did prepare to do this, right? I did prepare that, like, if nobody funds me, I will fund this thing for a year and without a problem. Yes, now you might think like, but you're going to burn a lot of cash doing it. So what? Like, the mission is bigger than me, right? And I think that's what I primarily think about. I practice meditation. I learned Vipassana meditation before moving to Canada. I did like a 10-day retreat. I had this small window in life, so I went for it. And that really helps me. I think like that has made me a more of an equanimous person where my emotions are rather stable. Like initially my emotions used to go like this, highs and lows. Now they're like,
Stable.
yeah, rather stable. So I always know that if there's a cocktail going on, I can manage it, and I'll only take an action after I'm done resolving my emotional cocktail, right? So that does empower you to do that. It does give you some clarity. So that is why I think that like, yeah, burnout can be a thing, right? Like you can burn out, so don't burn out. Like be mindful of your emotions,
It's not the end of the
understand.
world.
Exactly, right? Like chill, like take 2 days off, whatever, right? And then come back. So do whatever is necessary to not lose your emotional stability, because then everything falls apart. Like if you go down, then everything goes down, right? So you have to make sure that you do have that ownership and that responsibility to yourself to feel good. And then of course, like the passion and the mission, all of those things will just keep you going, and for as long as you can. And what's the worst that can happen? Come on, like yeah, we over exaggerate the consequences. Like there's no bad outcome. Like there are absolutely zero bad outcomes if you work with good intention. And maybe one thing I will add there is, you know when to give up if you stop making progress, right? If you can't make progress, and there hasn't been a single week in the entire journey of Reshape, which has been somewhat more than a year now, that we have not made progress. We've always made progress. And if I always talk to this with my co-founder, bro, everybody said no, that hey, this is stupid and you are too optimistic. People used to call us too optimistic when we had like 10 people, then 100 people, then 1,000 people, and I was like, yeah, you're not gonna figure it out. And like, because people will project their doubts onto you. We're like, bro, we had the opportunity to give up at any of those points. We did not, right? And that got us to tens of thousands of people, thousands of lives impacted, right? People love us, right? And now we're trying to solve this giant problem that we think that can change things at the level of humanity, that level of impact. And I guess that just like helps us keep going. That like if today we feel like giving up, hey, like revenues are not looking good. Yeah, whatever, man, we'll figure it out.
There is a solution to every problem.
Every problem, just keep doing it with good intention
Yeah.
and you're gonna
Keep
solve it.
doing everything. Yeah.
Exactly.
So one last thing that I want to know from you, Amol,
Yeah.
is that if you had to do for aspiring PMs or the aspiring entrepreneurs who are completely new, if you had to give them one piece of advice that they should actually do, or you would have done differently if you were doing Reshape, or you would have been involving AI into their product, what is that one piece of advice you would give to them?
Hmm. Just organizing my thoughts here. One mistake I made was the one I was advising against, doing too many things at once. Understand what you can execute, because like I had limited resources at hand and I wanted to do so many different things, and then so many signals were coming in. And I guess, like, we had nutrition tracking and workouts tracking right from the start, right? And then it would also integrate with watches. And what that was leading to things happen is that people, I was giving people for the app for testing nutrition tracking, and then they would tell me, hey, my watch is not connecting and there's this problem and then this problem. It would keep derailing conversations, right? And then I was like, hey, yeah, that's actually not ready, we just put it for the sake of it, we're working on improving that, right? And if you just put too much there, then it can be a problem. So definitely,
Go small.
understand some go small, have a core value defined. That's why I probably said this like 5 times in this conversation. Go small, identify the core value, build that, and then you can keep expanding. I think that is something that could have been done differently. Now the feature of that was that we were forced to do all the fix those things fast. That we release, we're like, oh my god, now we need to fix this, like, because we can't just undo a feature because some people are using it, right? So we it forced us, but probably not the optimal way to go. Could have anyway any day been released. Like, you don't have to perfect something to release it, but also, yeah, if you do too much from the start, yeah, it goes into chaos. That's one thing. Another thing I will say is, like, before trying to, like, monetize or anything, like, try to get the core flow set up that more and more people want to use it, and then try to figure out like how you would monetize it. People suggested to us early that, hey, put a paywall right when the user signs up, right? Like, so 80% paywall rate after user onboarding. We did that, and then we did some user interviews, and people were like just churning. Oh, I thought it was a free app, I'm not going to use it, and they churned. So without even tracking a single meal, they churned, right? Problem, right? We didn't even realize value. Give them
You
value.
block them. You block them
Yeah,
before they get the value.
yeah. I mean, I didn't blog. They could skip the paywall, but that I showed the paywall was the problem, right? Now we're still experimenting through what is the right balance, right? You do want to tell them that, hey, there are good premium features that they can avail, but I think activation rate is very important. So, the funnel generally goes like this: you get the user onboarded, you get the user activated, and you define what activated means. And generally, activation kind of determines the moment where the user understand the value prop of the product and how to use it, right? And for us, it's like track 5 meals, and now you've probably logged in all essential ways, and now you understand what, like, the app does. So now you're activated, and then it is about like retention after activation. So after the user is activated, now what does it mean for them to be retained, right? So these are the three primary things that you want to be working on for different parallel functions and features that you're building onto the app. Each feature will have its activation, each feature will have its like retention curves, etc. So plot those metrics in place. Of course, the day zero release and the stuff that I talked about earlier is very essential. And yeah, hire good people. I think that is it. I guess if you need to, like, early in the days, we did make some hires which we did have to spoon feed a lot, and it would take us a lot more time to manage them than we could build it ourselves, and that was not a good place to be in, right? So hire smart people, like the thing that you were saying about BAs, right? Like, that you being a good problem solver, good analytical thinker with great communication abilities, who can drive meetings, etc., you can just switch to a domain and get going on day one, right? It's something that you can very easily do. And I think that is the kind of people that you're looking for when you're building a startup, because there's so much to do. And like, as a founder, you need to worry about like all these domains I told you about, right? You can't be like, stuck with like, someone who's kind of slowing the machine down. So hire, like, one advice that they say in the startup world is like, hire slow, fire fast. Abide by the advice, right? Like, hire slow, fire fast. uh, get the right people, get the right team. It is what's going to determine the success rate of your startup. And that is pretty much it. Be organized in your approach, measure things. Yeah, yeah, don't be deluded. You're always going to think that you're deluded, but try not to be. That's it.
Yeah. Great. Thank you, Amol, for your precious time. Great insights. I was completely inspired when I read about your journey, and then now talking to you inspires me even more. Today, I not only got the understanding of you, but I also got the understanding of your entire journey and how a product manager or a BA basically fits in a team and and make a product or build a product that is so successful, especially in today's time when AI is actually being used in consumer products, the one that you actually build. So thank you so much for being here and sharing those insights.
It's been a pleasure, Afaq. Thank you so much for inviting me. I enjoyed this conversation a lot as well. So I hope there are bits and pieces from here which can help other people out there.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.